Hi, my name is Lucy, and today I'll be refuting Zach's claim. His claim was that there is no longer room for directorial authorship in the current landscape of mainstream film. His secondary claim was 1. Traditional directors are becoming less profitable. 2. Very few mainstream movies nowadays involve the director being an author of the movie. And 3, the production companies don't allow for directional control due to the brand being more valuable. My response to the claims are first, that in his main claim, he fails to explain what is directorial authorship in film and why is it important. The author theory is the theory that the director is the author of the film. So it considers filmmaking art. So like an artist is the author of painting, the director would be the author of a film. The problem with that is that movies involve much more than art. It involves money and people. And because of that, his first secondary claim was that traditional directors are becoming less profitable. He mentions the movie Silence by Martin Scorsese from 2016 that had a budget of $50 million, and he only had a worldwide lifetime of $61 million. What he fails to mention is that The Wolf of Wall Street, that was only 3 years before that, had a budget of $100 million and got $392 million. And that was only 3 years earlier. Other traditional directors that had profitable movies that he fails to mention are Alejandro Gonzalez, that got with the Renovant. He had a budget of $135 million and got $532 million, and Tarantino with Django Unchained that had a budget of $100 million and got $425 million. His second claim was that very few mainstream movies nowadays involve the director being an author of the movie. He uses examples from the top 10 movies of 2017 and 1997, but he doesn't mention any data from previous years or any years in between those chosen years, and because of that, it's not a valid comparison. Data must be analyzed in multiple ways instead of taking 2 random years and comparing both. He tries to show how the number of director-focused movies dropped, but he uses only the top 10 box offices of those 2 years. Even though a movie doesn't hit the top 10, it doesn't mean it wasn't successful or that the director focused movies don't exist anymore. And looking at his first 10 box office of a year doesn't show that directors are not authors anymore. It only shows that people are interested in sequels or brand movies. And they are much more popular now than 20 years ago in 1997. In 2017, 4 out of the top 10 box offices were sequels and 6 can be considered brand movies. The opponent also doesn't classify what makes a movie director-focused and what doesn't, which makes his points confusing to the audience. What method does he use to categorize those movies? He doesn't say. His third point was that production companies don't allow for directional control due to the brand being more valuable. But in film entertainment is a big business in the US, and it's expected to generate $35.3 billion in revenue by 2019. The movie industry employed over 420,000 people in 2017. And in an article for the Business Insider, the journalist Matt Turner explains that movie studios are going down the franchise route because they want to minimize the risk. They want to appeal to an international audience, and they want to bolster the potential for additional revenues through games and merchandise. And because of that, the production companies don't allow for directional control. In conclusion, because the reasons I presented, Zach's claim that there is no longer room for directorial authorship in the current landscape of mainstream film is not valid.
All right, Lucy, the proposition is identified, the secondary claims are laid out for us clearly, so the structural stuff is fine. You kind of start off with a claim. It's its own separate argument. It's about whether or not the definition of the auteur theory is adequate. And I think that you have a good criticism to make here, but it's a little bit short of being an argument. I think if you suggested, for instance, that the notion of auteurism is perhaps arbitrary, that it is largely an invention of academics, that it falls mostly outside of the mainstream of the film industry, and while it might be true of people who are specialists in independent cinema, it's rarely been true in the business part of show business, then I think the argument would be a little bit more relevant here. As it is, it's just a minor critique of something that you think was inadequate in his argument, but I'm not sure that it makes much of a point. On the second point, I thought that you did a pretty good job suggesting that, in fact, there are continuing to be people who are auteurs that are operating at a fairly successful level. You kind of diminish his dismissal of Scorsese by suggesting that, in fact, his prior film had a great deal of success. I thought that was okay. And then you have two other examples that you use to illustrate sort of auteur-type filmmakers who have had substantial success. I think there are others that you could point to as well, but those are pretty good examples. As a percentage of the films that are being presented, I'm not exactly sure that that's convincing, but I like the point that you get to on the second argument, which suggests that there's really something arbitrary about the way he's measuring it. He picks two random years, the current year and 20 years ago, to make a comparison on, and your argument is that data before and between those years would certainly be appropriate if we were going to see any particular trend that's going on. I do think you hurt yourself a little bit on the third point, because the last argument that you present actually seems to support the position that Zach's got, and that is that the film business is focusing more on franchise and sequel films for financial stability, and that's one of the reasons that it squeezes auteurs out. Well, that's a piece of evidence that I think he would have presented to support his position. I think what you want to argue here is that that only represents a segment of the film industry. It does represent an important segment of the film industry, but how many films get made every year? How many films make money each year? How many films are released? What new platforms are there? I think that there's a better argument to be made that says that he's operating from a very narrow premise that he's trying to generalize from, and I think that would work well in that response. If you'd had a couple of more examples on that second point, I think that would have worked as well. All right, thank you.